Hello, I'm Dianne Lowther, and welcome to the preview for the 6x6 Leadership Challenge. Now, if you've been receiving our emails and perhaps had a look at the information page about the challenge, then I'm guessing that perhaps you need just a little bit more information before you can decide whether or not this challenge is for you. So my intention today is to give you a little flavour of the kind of thing we're going to be doing on the live broadcasts. And they will be live, not recorded like this one. So every week I'm going to start off on Monday morning and set the scene for the week with a broadcast, just really to get you thinking in slightly different ways. So whatever you would normally be doing as part of your working week, I'm going to challenge you to stand back from it a bit and think about it slightly differently, with the intention that by doing that, you'll get some different results. I hope you'll get some better results just from taking a bit of time out to challenge your own thinking and your own habits. Once we've done that, then every week you'll get the chance to look at the online resources to help you implement some of the ideas that we've worked on. But the main thing is, I want to get you thinking differently. So for today, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share with you some ideas about how you manage your team, how you get the best out of people, and see if I can get you thinking in a rather different way about it than you might have done before. When I first thought about this programme, I was going to call it Managing People Made Easy. Because on the face of it, the process of managing a team of people is actually quite straightforward. There's a lot of things to do. There are regular activities to take part in. There are things to think about, plans to make, and so on. And I can reduce that to a fairly easy and straightforward system. But the truth is, managing people isn't easy. And the reason why it's not easy is that people don't stay the same. People have moods. You've probably noticed that, haven't you? People sometimes are really enthusiastic and engaged, and sometimes they're not. January is a classic time for people not to be very engaged. Here we are on the 10th, and people are still saying, "Did you have a nice Christmas? How was New Year?" People only just came back to work yesterday in some cases, and yet the month is nearly a third over. So how are we ever going to deliver January's results if we haven't got started right at the beginning of the month to make things happen? Well, stick with me, because I still think that we can pull January out of the bag if we work at it. So, as I said, I don't think managing people is particularly easy. I think it's very rewarding. I think it's worth doing. But it does take quite a lot of time and effort. And most people who are managers know that. It's one of the things that I often get people talking about when I go into companies. People say to me, "Yes, I really would love to do this with my team, but I've just got so many other things to do." Or they talk about the day job, as if managing people wasn't part of the job. But if you're a manager, then managing the people probably is the most important thing. There might occasionally be some things that are actually a bit more important than the team, but that's usually quite short-lived. In general, the most important thing about being a manager is actually managing the team. Now, the enemy of good management practice, paradoxically, is routine. I often say to people it's a good thing to have routines. I spent years of my life teaching time management, and routine is often a good way of ticking off the things that have to be done every week. If you have a routine, so you do them at the same time every week, then they just get done without you having to think about it and decide when to do them this week. The problem is, if you apply that to managing people, then you can run into difficulty. People say, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. It's not actually true when it comes to managing people. If you always do the same things, then what will happen is that people will get bored. They'll get stale. They'll get less productive. You've probably heard of the Hawthorne effect. It's named after a series of experiments done, I think, back in the 1960s. It's a long time since I did my psychology degree, so I can't remember exactly. But the thing that I took away from having read about the Hawthorne effect is that when people changed the working environment, supposedly to see whether or not they could get the optimum level of light and the optimum level of noise and so on, any change in the working environment actually increased productivity in a factory situation. Now, I know that not everybody who's watching this video works in a factory. In fact, lots of people are just working in offices where it's a rather different kind of setup than working in a production line. But the message, I think, is really interesting, that when you have a change in the environment, it stimulates an increase in productivity. So if you keep always doing what you've always done, you definitely won't get what you've always got. You'll get a kind of law of diminishing returns over a period of time. So I think the answer to all of this is to keep looking at it and keep challenging. What are we doing? Is it working? Is it the right thing? Is there something else that we could do that would be even better? For example, lots of people that I talk to, especially in large organisations, have to spend quite a lot of time on the telephone, often in group conference calls. Now, I don't know about you, but many of the people I talk to say that a conference call is probably the hardest way to have effective conversation. Because, first of all, we're missing all those visual cues that enable us to figure out who needs to speak next, who's got something to say that they're not saying, who's not happy about what's just been said, and so on. Some people are quite good at hearing that in voice tone and hearing the sharp intake of breath and so on, but not everybody's all that good at it. For many people, listening is the least preferred of their ways of receiving information through their senses. Lots of people are used to receiving information visually. They like to see something. And that's why, when you have a conference call, after a time, you'll get the sense that nobody's really listening. And that's because they've all started looking at their email. Yeah, I know everybody does it. We all see examples of it every day, don't we? So I talk to managers who say, yeah, well, we have this weekly conference call because my team is scattered all over Europe. And that's quite common these days. And we have these meetings. And I can tell really that people have switched off when they're reading their email and they're only half listening to what's going on. Okay, fair enough. That might be what happens. But why do you continue to have the conference call? Why not do something different? And a lot of managers say, well, I don't know what else to do. I can't think of anything. Okay, fair enough. So that's one of the things we're going to be doing as part of the 6x6 Leadership Challenge, is start to pool some of our ideas about how we can get over some of these common problems. Because if you've got that problem, chances are you're not the only person who's got that problem with their team. And through the online forums and the question and answer session every Friday afternoon, you'll get some interaction with other people if you're part of the challenge. But let's go back to that conference call where people are reading their email and the manager doesn't know what to do about it. You see, a lot of managers think that managing a team is something that they do at people, not something that they do with people. So a lot of managers spend a lot of time looking for the right way to manage people, but they never actually ask the people, how do you want to be managed? Now, how simple is that? If you said to everybody in your team, well, how often do you want to have a one-to-one meeting? Do you want to talk to me daily, weekly, monthly? Do you just want to come and get me when there's a problem? Do you want feedback or not? What really works for you? Now, if you're already having those sorts of conversations with your team, let me tell you, you're well ahead of the curve, because most people still haven't quite got it through their minds that that is a valid way to manage people. There's often a sense that management is something that should be done covertly. So going back to that team meeting that really isn't getting you anywhere, why not have a discussion in the conference call about how to make that conference call more engaging and more interesting? Why not draw on the people in your team to tell you what would work better for them? There might be some really simple things you could do that you're only one person, so you haven't thought of them. See, I think managing a team of people should be a joint effort. I think it's all about involving and engaging people. And the way that you think about what you're doing as a manager is going to be one of those things that will make a huge difference to the results you get from people. Many years ago, I had a client who was quite a senior manager and had brought me in to work with his team, quite a large team at various different levels. And so we built up quite a good working relationship and we got some good results with his team. And not surprisingly, he got promoted. He'd been in the new job maybe a couple of months, and he called me up one day and he said, I need you to come and help me turn this ragtag and bobtail of a team that I've got into a world-class team. Now, he may not even remember saying that. It was a long time ago, but it really stuck in my mind because I thought that was quite a strange way to describe his team, ragtag and bobtail. A little bit disparaging, really. So I went to meet the team and I worked with them. And yeah, there were some issues. There often are in teams. And the more that we worked, the more we discovered what could be done about it. And we sorted things out. And after about 6 weeks of working together, we did a big event. So we took the whole team away for a couple of days and worked on various things. And partly it was a celebration because they'd completed a big project. And partway through that 2-day event, the manager, who had described his people as ragtag and bobtail, said to me, "I think this team actually is a world-class team. I just hadn't seen it before." And it was at that point, when he started to think of them as a world-class team, that they all kind of stepped up and became much more the kind of people that he wanted them to be. And I really thought about that at the time, and I've thought about it often since then, because it seems to me that the way that a manager looks at their team will affect the way that the team sees themselves. So if you're got into the habit of seeing your team as being competent, but a bit dull, not very creative, not very innovative, then they probably won't be. If you've got in the habit of seeing your team as being demanding, a bit of a nuisance, distracting you from other things that need to get done, then they'll probably carry on being like that. So I really want you to step back from this and ask yourself, how do I see my team? What do I really think of them? What do I appreciate about them? What do I wish was different? Because by becoming conscious of some of those things, you can then get control over them. You can cultivate a positive mindset about the people that work with you. You can start to appreciate the things that make them a really great team for you to be the leader of. So that's what I mean by challenging your mindset, is just to take a few moments and stand back and say, what am I thinking here? And what am I doing? And is it serving my purposes? Because if you are prepared to change some of what you do and what you think, then that also sets a good example. And you may find that people in your team start to have a shift in attitude as well. You are, after all, the leader, and they will follow your lead, whether you like it or not. So, going back to the challenge, imagine what you could do if every week you took a bit of time out and thought through, what am I doing in this area of my leadership role? What am I doing with my team in this aspect of the job? And challenged your thinking and came up with some new ideas and discussed it with the team. What sort of difference do you think that might make over a period of 6 weeks? Now, I know that you can do that. The question is, will you do it? Will you do it on your own? Will you make the time for it? Or would it actually be easier for you to do it if you were part of a group of people going through the same process at the same time? I've quite often in the past organised meetings with people in my team, to discuss something so that I know it'll get done. Sometimes I don't actually need somebody else's input, but I know that if I set up half a day to spend with somebody else working on a project, it'll get done in that half a day. Whereas if I say I can do it on my own, sometimes what happens is that other things appear to be more important and I get distracted, and then I end up with just an hour to work on whatever it was. But by setting the time aside and committing it with another person, I know that the work's going to get done. And that really is the idea behind this challenge. If you commit yourself to that half an hour on a Monday morning with me, and a little bit of time during the week going through the activities in the online learning programme, and then the 45 minutes or so on a Friday afternoon to take stock and talk to other people and ask questions and so on. If you commit yourself to that time, I promise you it'll make a difference to the way that you think about your team. It might even make a difference to the way that you do your job. And I'm pretty certain it's going to make a difference to the results that your team deliver for you by the end of the 6 weeks. So what are you waiting for? Go and sign up now.